Eli Letterman, Guerin Emick coming to you from the Alamodome in San Antonio. We are just minutes removed from Oklahoma's 38-24 defeat in the Alamo Bowl to Arizona. Guerin, there were a lot of highs tonight, a lot of anticipation for Jackson Arnold, a lot of good stuff from Jackson Arnold, but also four turnovers for the six the Sooners committed tonight came from Jackson Arnold, and ultimately that's what bit the Sooners. We just heard from Brent Venables. We just spoke to some players. We're back here out on the field. Where do we begin with this one?
I'll say, and I might be in the minority, Eli, especially among fans back home, Oklahoma fans back home. But I actually thought it was a pretty fun game. I thought it was like I called it a banger in the rapid reaction we do the first thing on the Solid Crowd website.
Where'd you learn that
Um,
term? I mean, I know you got children. Where did you learn banger?
proper football, proper football. That we should steal a lot of terms in American football from proper football. Um, no, I mean and Arnold was is sort of part of why I thought tonight was sort of I don't want to say it was the best game I've ever seen, far from that, but compared to bowl season, which has been turned into a second rate exercise, we should get so much drama, and we got a lot tonight because Arnold was had his growing pains in the first and fourth quarters when the turnovers occurred, but was as good as he was shaky in the second and third and rallied Oklahoma back on the brink of victory. I thought Oklahoma did some good things outside of Arnold. Receivers helped him at times. Sawchuk had a 100-yard game. Pass rush was really their defense all night because the secondary wasn't helping much against Arizona's receivers. And to Arizona credit, Eli, they played well in important moments, whether it was Noah Fafita making a play or their outstanding receiver McMillan running through OU's coverage, or the defense taking the ball again and again and again. So I know there's going to be disappointment because Oklahoma seemed on the verge of locking this one up in the second half, but I was entertained, and I don't think you come away with this thinking we're really in trouble here as they head into the SEC next fall.
Yeah, I think for one, you're right. We got a true bowl game. Felt like an old fashioned bowl game. Crowd was good. These teams were into it. It was
Mm-hmm.
highly entertaining, pretty physical. All the things that you people might say is lost from bowl season we had here. I think if you're an OU fan and you're trying to evaluate this game, it's just kind of a question of, what matters tonight, December 28th, or I guess it's 29th now, that we were reporting here at 1 a.m. in San Antonio, and what's going to matter in 9 months. Because here's the thing, you saw Jackson Arnold, and you saw just about everything you would have wanted to see. You knew he was going to make mistakes. There were going to be growing pains. Not every turnover he committed was on him. I guess, both of the Farouk fumbles were fumbles. They overturned that, what initially looked like a pick on the pick six. But point being, you saw the promise there. And, okay, Jackson Arnold's first career start behind a makeshift offensive line and missing some other guys wasn't perfect. If you can get past that and see what you saw from him tonight, you can see what the promise is. And same deal around the rest of this roster. I mean, this is not the offensive line
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma's going to take, not even into, September of 2024, but like next week. They're going to there's going to be turnover. They have work to do. We knew that before this game, and we know it now. And you could say the same thing at different spots. So I think it's about taking the right takeaways here. Brent Venables said it afterward, like a lot of good to take from this. This doesn't change, the growth of year two. You
Right.
consider, I think in August, a lot of OU fans probably would have taken 10-3. They might have pictured that trip to Arlington that a lot of folks were anticipating. I'm sure everyone would have taken a bowl win, but on the whole, I think you've got to be pleased with what you saw tonight if you're an OU fan, and just say, look, you're not going to win many games when you turn it over six times, and be pleased with where the Sooners have closed 2023, because there's no doubt about it. This is a far cry from December 22 and a 6-7 finish in Orlando a year ago.
Yeah, I'm going to condense sort of the slate still being very open for this team, blank, if you will. Condense that to Arnold. I followed him from the team gathered for the alma mater in the end zone after the game. I finally found him, just curious to see what kind of reaction I might get from him. And I walked a few feet behind him, all the way off the field into the tunnel and to the edge of the OU locker room. And he never changed expressions, didn't say anything, didn't you know? His post game comments were, um, along the lines of got to play better. The mistakes were on me. That's my fault. That's what the quarterback take. That's called the quarterback taking responsibility. That's encouraging. So again, there's a tendency in this fan base to overreact to everything. And you can tell them all you want that the Bulls don't mean as much as they used to. That 10-3 is still a pretty darn good record, coming off 6-7. And you're going to get more tonight or this morning, as we recorded on Friday morning, that are going to be upset with what should have been a 31-13 lead melting into a 38-24 loss. And I just wouldn't go there. And again, I'm going to specify Arnold in the column I'm writing for Sellout. But I just don't think this was the game or the situation to react that way. Be happy that it was a spirited game. As many players stuck around to play as they did, and be grateful for, again, the growth that Arnold showed in those second, third quarters.
Well, on the Arnold front, we can kind of close the door here because we're going to spill a lot of ink on him and talk a lot about him tonight, tomorrow, the next 9 months. This tonight was absolutely more beneficial to Jackson Arnold than going to the Camellia Bowl and having a 63-0 beatdown on some team that has half its team in the portal. Playing in a competitive game like this in this environment, he took a lot of good hits, made some really freshman-y mistakes, and also threw a couple balls that made you think. I know you tweeted this, Guerin, but about Heisman Park, and then people starting to dig out a plot for Jackson Arnold. So a lot of encouraging there. How much should you put into the fact that this was a game that OU at one point looked like it was on the verge of closing out and didn't? If you want to be really pessimistic and put a lot of stock into this, you can tack this onto the list of games that OU hasn't closed out, or they maybe haven't had the killer instinct under Brent Venables. The flip side is that this game is kind of an outlier because all bowl games are outliers at this point. And the last point on the defense, then I'll close in question for you, is that I think OU's defense in the whole played pretty well tonight. They got beat big, and certainly early it felt like Arizona was getting everything it wanted. But that point in the game where OU really wrestled control, and Jackson Arnold looked his best, coincided with a period, I think it was 5 straight punts for Arizona. They played well. They opened in that 3-3-5 defense for a little bit of speed, some really good individual performances. I think Isaiah Coe went out really well in his final game. Kendall Dolby looked good. Point being, I think, again, you can put as much into the outcome as you want in a bowl game at this point, but a positive performance from the defense. But I do want to ask you, I know we've said, take a lot of this with a grain of salt. What is the one thing you saw tonight that you are convicted about going into 2024 with the Sooners, whether it's an individual performance, a position group, a unit, something you do feel confident that you saw tonight that you can project onto the 2024 Sooners?
Well, I'll go back to the defensive line and the continued. I started the season with something about if you want to judge how much growth, not just in terms of this season, but what's ahead for the program, if you want to judge that growth and the importance of development, especially as they get ready for the SEC, watch the line of scrimmage. If you can't make things happen there better than you did a year ago when the line of scrimmage was a problem when the Sooners finished 6-7, then you don't have a lot of hope in a conference like the SEC. So the fact that they were able to pressure Noah Fafita, make I think twice the number of TFLs that Arizona did. Arizona got all the takeaways. OU made all the TFLs. Takeaways were more important in the final outcome. But TFLs mean something, especially as Venables builds the program at the line of scrimmage. Likes to say inside out in terms of a lot of things. I think that's an apt way to put how he wants to build the physical nature of this team. So if they're going to continue to grow there, and I think they are, if you look at some of the recruits they're bringing in, even some of the transfers that are coming this way, then you are encouraged by tonight. Gave up a lot of yards to a really good offense, dangerous quarterback with some fantastic receivers. That's not great, but I was encouraged, and I would be very, very encouraged by the progress made, especially at the line of scrimmage, at least on defense, heading into the offseason.
I think that's all spot on. My two, one facetious, only slightly. The Roughnecks, the folks who they're in their uniforms and they've got the guns and celebrate OU touchdowns. They need quieter firearms. This is a loud stadium. The dome keeps sound in. and goodness, did we jump every time that those went off. But on a more serious note, I think Gavin Sawchuk is a place if you want to look for a guy who seems to really like playing in bowl games. 2 years in a row, he's kind of set the stage, or you use the bowl game as a stage for breakout performance. And I think, a year ago, the Cheez-It Bowl was where Gavin Sawchuk emerged, and we saw him for the very first time and said he's a guy who can compete, in that depth for 2023. I think you leave tonight, and we know that, they've still got Javante Barnes. They've got five-star running back coming in. They've got UTSA transfer, UT Martin transfer, Samuel Franklin coming in. There's competition, but when you've got a running back who's closed the season with 5 straight 100-yard rushing performances, who looked as good as he did at points tonight, I think you can look at Gavin Sawchuk and feel like you at least have a front runner for your starter in the backfield in 2024, and having those pieces, and then ideally some great depth behind him, something the Sooners didn't have this year. I think is something that OU fans, no matter how you felt about this outcome, can feel confident about. Guerin, we're going to wrap it there. Gone long enough, and we're going to write long enough into this night, and then we got to get you to the airport. But for now, that is it from the Alamodome, from me, from Guerin, from our tireless producer, Jacquelyn Musgrove. We will have plenty more on the Sooners at SoutLoudCrowd.com.